All right, let's just jump right into this. I have to tell you, you've been living a lie. So many of those little facts we think we know about the animal kingdom, the ones we repeat with total confidence, they're completely 100% wrong.
I mean, think about the goldfish, right? What's the first thing that pops into your head? A teeny tiny brain, a memory that just resets every few seconds. Well, that's exactly where we're going to start. And look, it's not just about fish. From the birds in the sky to the creatures in the sea, our world is absolutely packed with these animal myths that we just accept as truth. As the biologist, my job here is to set the record straight, and I promise you, the reality is way more interesting than any fiction we could have possibly made up.
So, first up, let's talk about one of our biggest mistakes. We consistently, and I mean consistently, underestimate how smart other animals are. We have this tendency to measure all intelligence against our own, and if it doesn't look like us, well, we just dismiss it. But that is just not how biology works.
Okay, so back to our little friend the goldfish. That 3-second memory? It's a total myth. Not even close. Scientific studies have shown they can remember things, complex things, like feeding schedules or even recognizing their owners for months. So yeah, if you think your goldfish is giving you the side eye when you forget dinner, it's not your imagination. It is absolutely judging you.
And this is another tragic myth that comes from that. The idea that goldfish just grow to fit the size of their tank? That's not some neat little feature. It means their growth is being stunted by awful conditions. Seriously, if you give them the right space, these fish can grow to be the size of a football. That tiny bowl isn't a cute little home, it's a cage.
All right, so we get some animals wrong, we underestimate them, but we must get some right, right? I mean, the wise old owl. It's been a symbol of wisdom for centuries, the scholar of the forest. Well, this is a perfect example of how we judge a book by its cover, or in this case, an animal by its big, thoughtful-looking eyes.
And what's so wild here is how we got it completely backwards. Owls, they actually have pretty small brains for their size, and they're not great problem solvers. You know why? Most of the space in their skull is taken up by those giant eyes. Meanwhile, the very animals we call bird brains, like crows or pigeons can count. They can recognize themselves in a mirror, which is a huge sign of self-awareness. So maybe think twice next time you call someone a bird brain.
So it's not just intelligence we get wrong, it's also the why. Why do animals do what they do? We're storytellers, right? We project our own feelings and logic onto them, when the real reasons are all about survival. It's all biology.
Just take the classic image of an ostrich burying its head in the sand. We've even turned it into a metaphor for avoiding your problems. But think about it. If they actually did that, they'd suffocate. When an ostrich is scared, it lies flat on the ground to blend in. And that whole head-burying thing we think we see, that's actually them turning their eggs in their nest on the ground. It's not cowardice, it's just good parenting.
And what about chameleons, the ultimate masters of disguise, right? We assume they change color to blend in with a branch or a leaf, like little ninjas. But the truth is actually much, much cooler. They do have some ability to blend in, sure, but their color changes are mostly about communication and regulating their body temperature. They're basically wearing their mood on their skin for everyone to see.
This is one of my favorites. You know that romantic, kind of spooky image of a lone wolf howling at a full moon? Well, wolves could not care less about the moon. Howling is just their version of a group chat. It's a long-distance call to check in with the rest of the pack. We're the ones who turn them into poets, because, it just makes for a better story. Classic humans.
Okay, so far we've been talking about simple misunderstandings, right? Myths that come from us just being, well, human. But sometimes these stories aren't accidents. Sometimes they're created on purpose, for entertainment, or even for profit.
The whole idea that lemmings commit mass suicide is a complete and total lie. It comes from a Disney nature film from the 1950s, where the filmmakers, because they wanted a more dramatic ending, literally herded these poor little animals off a cliff. A choice they made for a movie created a fact that's now a permanent part of how we talk. And that brings us to an even darker reason for these myths. Sometimes this stuff is made up for one very simple reason: to sell you something.
You might have heard this one. Sharks don't get cancer. It's a powerful idea, isn't it? Well, it's not true. They do. This so-called fact was completely invented as a marketing ploy to sell shark cartilage supplements as a miracle cure. The product has been totally debunked, of course, but the lie just keeps on going, hurting both sick people and sharks.
So
after all of that, after peeling back all these layers of fiction, what's left? What's left is an invitation, really. An invitation to look at the world a little bit differently, to question those simple stories, and to start thinking a little more like a biologist.
So let's just recap for a second. We've seen that common knowledge is often just common, but not knowledge. We tend to see animals through this very human filter, which makes us see wisdom in an owl or stupidity in a fish. We mistake their survival instincts for our emotions, and we've seen how powerful that tendency is, so powerful that it can be used to sell movies or bogus products, creating myths that have very real consequences.
And really, this is the question I want to leave you with. We've only just scratched the surface here debunking a few animal myths. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we were this off base about things we see all the time, what other facts are out there just waiting to be exposed as fiction?
Because in the end, the truth is always more complex, it's always more surprising, and it is infinitely more fascinating than any simple story we could ever make up. The real animal kingdom doesn't need our myths to be amazing.
Today, we're digging into some of the weirdest fads and crazes in American history. You know, the stuff that time really tried to sweep under the rug. You think some of the fads we have going on today are weird? Oh, just wait. The past gives the present a serious run for its money. Okay, so how about we kick things off with this one? A beauty contest for feet. Yep, you heard me right. And that brings us to our very first category, America's strangest competitions. It turns out people have always found some pretty baffling ways to one-up each other. I mean, it seems like no stone was left unturned. We're talking everything from crowning the most beautiful cow to finding out who could eat the most pickles. Literally anything could become a contest. Yeah, you are seeing that correctly. A genuine foot beauty pageant. They even had the contestants cover their faces with bags so the judges could focus purely on, the aesthetic qualities of their toes. Who needs personality when you've got a perfectly formed arch, right? And hey, it wasn't just for people. In 1915, San Francisco actually crowned a Miss Holstein, the most beautiful cow at the World's Fair. And go back a few decades to 1887, and you've got a National Pickle Day to find the country's biggest pickle lover. It was a pretty big deal. But think about this. Way before the internet, way before TikTok, the original viral challenge was already making the rounds on college campuses. And what was the challenge? Well, it was as simple as it was bizarre. Swallow 1 live goldfish. And this wasn't just some one-off thing. No, Ivy League schools were actually keeping scoreboards. Students were competing to see who could swallow the most fish. It was this crazy test of, bravado? It just goes to show you, viral challenges are nothing new. They just didn't have phones to film it all. Okay, so this whole idea of pushing boundaries wasn't just for kicks. It actually spilled over into the world of health and wellness. And let me tell you, sometimes the cures were way more alarming than the actual sickness. Before we had modern evidence-based medicine, the line between a real treatment and just plain superstition was, pretty blurry. I mean, forget antibiotics. People were turning to stuff like ground-up mummy powder. I know, it sounds totally unbelievable, right? But you have to remember, this was a time with very few effective medicines, so people were desperate. I mean, so desperate that back in the 1800s, this stuff called mummia, which was, yes, literally ground up ancient mummies, was sold as a cure-all. It's just a crazy reminder of how far people would go to feel better, even if it meant, that. And then you've got the humble tomato, which had its own wild ride. In the early 1800s, people were actually afraid of it. They called it the poison apple. That is, until some brave guy ate a whole basket of them in public in the 1830s just to prove they were safe. And talk about a complete 180. By the late 1800s, doctors were actually prescribing tomato pills for everything from headaches to depression. So, moving beyond medicine, some of the everyday things people just did, some of the social norms from back then, would seem completely alien to us today. Okay, I promise you are not misreading this. For a little while, if a kid was under the parcel weight limit, parents could literally mail them. Like attach stamps to their clothes and have the mail carrier deliver them to grandma's house. I guess it was cheaper than a train ticket. Public life was full of its own weirdness too. For instance, when San Francisco rolled out the world's first paid toilets way back in 1882, the citizens were not happy. And their solution to the protest? They just started carrying their own portable chamber pots around town. You could almost call it the original bring your own bucket movement. And this kind of public creativity, it also found its way into some of the strangest inventions and gadgets you could actually go out and buy. So, are you tired of hitting the snooze button? Well, a patent from 1899 had let's call it a forceful solution. It was an alarm bed that would violently tilt at whatever time you set, literally throwing you onto the floor. Shockingly, it never really took off. Or how about this one for new parents? A self-rocking baby cradle. Sounds great, right? The catch? It was powered by a steam engine. Yeah, as you can imagine, most parents were a little hesitant to put their newborn next to a machine that could also power a train. So when you look back at all this stuff, toe pageants, swallowing goldfish, mailing children, steam-powered cradles, it really just highlights how dramatically our whole idea of normal can change over time. But it does make you think, right? What normal things that we do every single day are going to be the ridiculous history facts of tomorrow? It's a pretty fascinating thought, and it really makes you wonder,